Good evening, everyone. All of you can hear me? Okay. So we'll be starting with general surgery today. And till now general medicine was going on, right? On Monday and Tuesday. So today we'll be starting with general surgery. And tomorrow again there will be a continuation of general medicine, whatever is left. Okay. So get your, all of your keynotes are ready. Okay, so the topics we'll be talking today is hemorrhage, shock, burns, grafts, and all the diseases related to arteries and lymph nodes. Okay, just let me know if my voice is too low. Okay. Starting with hemorrhage. Now, all of you have learned a lot about hemorrhage and the classifications of hemorrhage. We'll be talking in basic about the hemorrhage, shock, and all the other topics which were mentioned in the index. Because like general medicine also, in general surgery, we just need to concentrate more upon MCQs and on facts. Okay, rather than the entire detailings and the entire procedures and etc. You just need to know the classifications, the definitions and tests, and very important terms you need to know MCQ point of view. Okay. So we will start with the classification of hemorrhage. It is divided into primary hemorrhage, reactionary hemorrhage and secondary hemorrhage. Okay. Now what is primary hemorrhage? This hemorrhage tends to occur at the time of surgery or trauma. Okay. So whenever you are doing an impaction or an extraction or anything related to a surgery, or if the patient suffers a trauma, whatever bleeding or hemorrhage occurs at that very moment is primary hemorrhage. Okay. Next is reactionary hemorrhage. This occurs within 24 hours, but it mostly occurs within 4 to 6 hours. What does this mean? It means that whatever hemorrhage occurs within the first 24 hours is reactionary hemorrhage, but usually this hemorrhage tends to occur within 4 to 6 hours. Clear? Now why does this occur? This occurs because of the dislodgement of clot, the slippage of ligatures, or due to hypertension. Okay, if the clot gets displaced or the sutures get dislodged, it leads to bleeding. Now is it there, Radhika? That is reactionary hemorrhage. Next is secondary hemorrhage. Now this hemorrhage occurs during 7 to 14 days of surgery. That is, whichever hemorrhage or bleeding takes after 7 to 14 days of you have done the surgery is secondary hemorrhage, and the reason for the secondary hemorrhage is infection. Because there is an infection in that area, it leads to the dislodgement or the slippage of the sutures, and it causes sloughing of the vessel wall. That is the erosion of the vessel wall, which leads to bleeding. Okay, so these are very important MCQs. Okay, the thing which frequently you get confused with is reactionary hemorrhage and secondary hemorrhage. Okay, so remember, secondary hemorrhage always occurs after reactionary hemorrhage. So do not get confused with these two terms. Clear, all of you, with the 3 types of hemorrhages? Okay, that was how the hemorrhage is classified according to the time when it occurs. Now they have divided it according to the amount of blood loss. Okay, mild is less than 500 ml blood loss, moderate is 500 to 1000, and severe is more than 1000 ml. Okay, that is according to how much blood is lost, they have divided into mild, moderate and severe. Now the next classification is according to the place where this hemorrhage occurs. External means, as the term says, outside, so that hemorrhage will be visible. You will be able to see that bleeding. Next is internal hemorrhage. Okay, so whatever bleeding occurs in those peritoneal cavities or any inside organs or cavities which is not usually seen. You know, sometimes a patient after an accident, he may not show any signs of external hemorrhage, but slowly he may die after a few hours. That may be because of internal hemorrhage, because the bleeding was internal and it wasn't visible, so it wasn't detected. Good evening, Poonam. Okay, so the classification of hemorrhage is according to the time, according to the blood loss, and according to the place where it occurs, outside the body or inside the body. Clear? Next is, you need to determine how much blood is lost. Okay, so it is usually determined on certain facts. Those are, the blood clot is actually the size of a clenched fist, which is roughly equal to 500 ml of blood. Okay, now the swelling which occurs in closed fractures after a trauma, or there is a moderate swelling in case of fracture of the tibia, the approximate blood loss here is 500 to 1500 ml blood loss. Now we need to know how much blood loss has occurred. Okay, so it's easier for you to transfuse that amount of blood loss. So when there is a moderate swelling in the tibia fracture, it is usually 500 to 1500 ml blood loss. When there is a moderate swelling in the fractured shaft of a femur, okay, a longer bone than the tibia, so here a moderate swelling, the blood loss may be 500 to 2000 ml blood loss. So these are just facts which you need to know, all MCQ point of view important because there are a lot of numbers involved here again. Next is swab weighing. Now what is swab weighing? Any of you have an idea of what is swab weighing from the term? It is something in relation to blood loss. So can anybody tell me how are these? Yeah, the swab which is used to dab the blood. Okay, those swabs are weighed. Yeah, after it is soaked with blood. Very good. So they are weighed and we actually come to know the amount of blood loss occurring in the body. Now can you tell me the swab weighing will overestimate your number or it will underestimate the number? It will overestimate your blood level or it will underestimate? Yes, it will underestimate. Can you tell me why? Very good. But can anybody tell me why it will underestimate? Yeah. The slide is, now it's there, right? Now the slide is there. Yeah. So see, this is the swab machine where this blood soaked swabs are placed. And always there is an underestimation of the blood. Why? Because a lot of blood tends to get evaporated after you have dabbed them with your swab. Or yeah, evaporation occurs. Very good. Also on your operating table, when a lot of blood is involved, when a surgery involving a lot of blood, the blood tends to evaporate even from the patient's body. So actually the blood loss from the body is underestimated by this technique. So they have taken out a new technique that in swab weighing, whatever your number comes, that if the number is X, you need to multiply that number 1.5 times to get the estimate of a proper, no voice. Poonam, just check your settings or just increase the volume. Okay. So you need to multiply this number by 1.5 times and then you get an estimate of how much blood loss has occurred in the body. So just make a note of this in your, we are talking about hemorrhage, Ragini, general surgery. We have started in hemorrhage. So just switch over to that topic in your keynotes. Okay. So just add this point in your keynotes regarding the multiplication of that number by 1.5 times in swab weighing technique. Clear all of you? Okay. Next is there is another classification of hemorrhage shock, which actually is not a classification, but there is an MCQ asked from this, so you made a classification this way. It says that when 15% of blood is lost, it's class 1, 15 to 30 is 2, 30 to 40 is 3, and more than 40. Okay, this is an important stage here. See, when there is 15, less than 15 to approximately 40% of blood loss, the body tends to give you back the blood. Okay, the patient does not go in shock. The body helps to regain the blood volume again. But when your blood volume loss is more than 40%, that is the time when the patient actually goes into shock. So it's a very important MCQ and a very frequently asked one, that how much blood should be lost for a hemorrhagic shock to occur, and that is 40%, more than 40% blood loss. Clear all of you? A very important MCQ. Okay. Next is, how do you manage this hemorrhage? Now, what are the two basic things you do for managing a hemorrhage? Saurabh, see, when there is blood loss between 0 to 40%, okay, whatever blood is lost, the body tends to recirculate the blood and help you to keep up with that blood loss. The patient does not go in shock or he does not faint. But if the blood loss is more than 40%, the body is not able to manage that amount of a blood loss, and the patient then tends to go into shock. So it's an important MCQ that how much blood loss should occur for a patient to go into shock. So it's always more than 40%. Clear? Now, how do you manage a hemorrhage? Okay, one is by preventing blood loss from your body. Second is, whatever blood loss has occurred, you tend to replace it. Clear? So these are the two important points you need to do. One is to stop the bleeding. Second is to whatever bleeding has occurred, you tend to replace it with all those solutions and blood transfusions. Clear? So the first thing when bleeding occurs, what do? Is pressure and packing. Okay, that is the best method and the first method to be adopted to manage a case of hemorrhage. Even when a patient after an extraction keeps bleeding, you need to apply pressure with a gauze piece, okay, and pack it. So this is also an important MCQ where they can ask you which is the first step you do in managing a hemorrhage, okay. Next is position and rest. Now there are two positions. One is Trendelenburg where the foot is raised, and a reverse Trendelenburg where the head is raised. Now when do you need to do a foot raised and when do you need to do a head raised? You need to do this depending upon the site of bleeding. Okay, from where the patient is actually losing blood, you need to raise that part of the body so that the blood loss becomes minimal. It reduces. Getting me? So if there is a bleeding from the foot, you need to raise the foot so that the bleeding loss is minimal. Getting the point over here between these two positions of Trendelenburg and reverse Trendelenburg? All of you? See, this is the Trendelenburg position where the head is raised, and this is the reverse this is the Trendelenburg position where the feet is raised, and this is the reverse Trendelenburg position where the head is raised. Clear all of you? So depending upon the site of bleeding, you need to raise the position. Clear? So what will be the first step you will do to manage a hemorrhage? Before placing the patient in any position, yes, you will apply pressure. Excellent. Second is your position. Next is tourniquets. Tourniquets are also certain cuff type of thing which are used to apply pressure and prevent bleeding. Okay. Next is replacing the blood lost by certain fluids. Now what are these fluids? The most important fluid and the one which is almost used for everything, or the one which is used first in transfusion, is Ringer's lactate solution. Okay, all of you must be well versed with this term, Ringer's lactate, because it causes rapid expansion of the circulatory volume. So this is a very important IV infusion crystalloid which is used mostly the first agent in IV infusion. The other plasma expanders are dextrin, gelatin, hydroxyethyl starch, albumin, and blood transfusion. Okay, so you need to remember all these names for managing the hemorrhage, which other solutions other than Ringer's lactate are used. Clear? But the important MCQ here is Ringer's lactate, and what is the first step done in managing a hemorrhage? That is application of pressure. Okay, now if the bleeding does not stop up to a higher level also, then you have other methods, like you use a Spencer-Wells forceps. This is just like an artery forceps which is used to stop the bleeding from arteries, veins and capillaries. And another is the Horsley's wax. This is nothing but your bone wax, which is again used to prevent bleeding. Okay, this is your Spencer's forceps and this is your Horsley's bone wax. Okay.